So a lot of times I was told like, oh, you should read the Bible, you should pray, you should do this, do that, you should be a good student, be a good filial son, and it's for your good. I grew up hearing Bible stories, I grew up hearing sermons week in, week out. So I knew that eternity existed. I knew that death would come for every single one. And in my mind I was like, I'm here now, I'm gonna die one day. What's the point? Sometimes suicidal ideation would come up. Yeah. It started from thinking like, oh, it would be better if I was in heaven. To like, oh, it would be good if I didn't wake up tomorrow. To like, oh, maybe I should do something to like, in some sense, stop the pain, stop the suffering. Yeah, then the pastor referred me to the psychiatrist. They put me on some medication to help adjust the chemical imbalances in my head. Yeah, but at the same time, all I know is that in some sense, I often feel that I failed as a Christian. I grew up in a Christian family. I attended church every single Sunday without fail. I remember my parents would even give me like $1 coin every time to like put into the offering bag. Then I'm very happy because after I put in the $1 coin, then they, at the end of the Sunday school, they give me another $1 coin to go vending machine and buy green tea or Milo. They really loved me and my two siblings, my two older siblings. Yeah, they really believed in bringing us to church for us to hear Bible stories. And I think ever since young, God was real for me. Hearing all those stories, it wasn't like distant in the sense. It was just like, okay, there's something I know about God. So a lot of times I was told like, oh, you should read the Bible, you should pray, you should do this, do that, you should be a good student, be a good filial son, and it's for your good. It pleases God the Father. And I think a lot of times the motivation just wasn't there. Yeah, I knew that all those things, and a lot of people, they really loved me, and there's all good intentions. It's just that I think in my head, the disconnect wasn't that doing this is for my own good, but like, why should I even do this? Or like, why is doing this for my good? I was never ever so clear on what exactly is the gospel. I knew that I was a Christian. I knew that I believed in Jesus as my Lord and Savior. What exactly does that mean? I didn't really have a good grasp on that. I think throughout the years from growing up, primary school, secondary school, usually people describe me as a very happy-go-lucky kind of figure. Yeah, where I'll just like run around, then like people like they were studying very hard, then I'm like, study for what? Like, yeah, just have fun lah. Yeah. In secondary school, in PSLE, yeah, my parents actually did not expect me to score pretty high. Yeah, so when like my PSLE, what do they call it? PSLE score came to like above 250, they were like very shocked. When my name appeared on like the students above 250, yeah. So they didn't really know where to put me, so they just threw me to, they look at the list from Kiasu parents or something like that, like the top schools, then just put it in the order. Yeah, so I got into, I think by, what do they call it, T-score, rank point. Yeah, I got into the second school because of that. Yeah, so in that school, it was a very competitive school. Everyone there knew what they were running after. But as for me, I was like, I think for me, I grew up hearing Bible stories. I grew up hearing sermons week in, week out. So I knew that eternity existed. I knew that death would come for every single one. And in my mind, I was just very like short circuit, like, I'm here now, I'm gonna die one day. What's the point of me studying very hard to get good grades, to get a good degree, to get a good job, to earn a lot of money just to end up like in some sense dying? Yeah, knowing that at the end of it, it doesn't really come up to that much. Yeah, so, but at the same time, at the other end of it, I was taught that being a good Christian meant working hard, meant really studying very hard for your grades, preparing for your exams, doing all your homework. Yeah, but at the same time, there wasn't much motivation for me. So all that came out of it was that, oh, everyone else chasing for something. I don't really know what I'm doing here. But all I know is that in some sense, I often feel that I failed as a Christian. I often feel that I failed as a Christian son, a Christian student, a Christian friend even. Sometimes suicidal ideation would come up. Yeah, it started from thinking like, oh, it would be better if I was in heaven. To like, oh, it would be good if I didn't wake up tomorrow. To like, oh, maybe I should do something to like, in some sense, stop the pain, stop the suffering. Yeah. I went to counseling at YWAM with my parents. My mom brought me there, but I think there I didn't really do anything much. I just went there. I put on a front for everyone to see, oh, I'm okay, I'm doing well. I'm the happy-go-lucky, I'm very cheerful. And yeah, indeed I was very cheerful whenever I was with my friends. I could crack all those jokes. Yeah, but I think at the same time, there was a gnawing feeling within me where I was like, oh, I'm not enough, I'm not sufficient. I don't really know what I'm doing here on this earth. And in some sense, there's this kind of meaningless, purposelessness to life. And that coupled with all the pain and suffering that was presented to me, be it in my own life, be it through my observation of the world. Yeah. Isn't it just better if I quickly ended it all here right now? Yeah, I think the only two things that were stopping me at that time, those few nights that I was constantly crying myself to sleep, the only two things that stopped me at that time was I was scared that, oh, if I ended my life now, why go to hell? Yeah, because I was very aware that hell probably did exist. There's so many bad people. And like there's this sense of justice within each one of us. And so many bad people end up passing without justice being dealt to them. You didn't mean there's this sense of there must be something, there must be some sort of judgment system that goes on in the afterlife, in eternity. Yeah, so I think in some sense I soldier on, I just sucked it up, as a lot of people will tell a lot of guys. So I just suck it up, just keep moving forward and just to learn. Yeah. But I think deep down inside of me, there was still, in some sense, some authors would call it a hole that couldn't be filled. I went into NS. NS was a difficult time, I think, for me because as most of the people that actually went through NS, you actually go through physically strenuous periods. And that takes a toll on your body, that takes a toll at the same time on your ability to regulate your own emotions and to speak loving truths, loving encouragements to yourself. I remember during BMT even, there was a time where things really took a turn for even worse. There were nights where I really just so wish that I wouldn't wake up the next morning just to get screamed at by my sergeants. But in some sense, I just couldn't see like the value of what was the point of me being even alive. Yeah. So there were nights even during BMT where I was sleeping, everyone was sleeping, I was awake thinking like, should I just like, in some sense, end all my suffering and pain, knowing that if I live to see tomorrow, if I live towards the end of tomorrow, in some sense, if I calculate the net benefits and net costs, you don't have to compare. The net costs heavily outweigh the net benefits of being alive. Yeah. I managed to get through BMT somehow. Yeah, but for me, like the negativity was already inside. So there was, in some sense, it was double attack from all fronts. Yeah. Waking up every day to, in some sense, being told that you're not enough, you're not sufficient. And me being at the same time so acutely aware that, yeah, I am not sufficient, I'm not enough. And because of those insufficiencies and that those kind of weaknesses, in some sense, it led to a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. And yeah, you go through a lot of pain and suffering like naturally in NS. And for me, there was nothing at the end of NS to look forward to. A lot of people, it was just pain, every single life station, if you will. But I managed to get through those few months through a lot of prayer. I constantly ask like, Lord, why is it this? Lord, why is it that? Lord, would you have mercy on me? Yeah, a lot of times, even just not knowing who exactly Jesus was, yeah, then I couldn't really put it into words if you ask me back then. So I think even throughout all those years from secondary school to JC2, there was this part of me where it was really, in some sense, maybe James may call it double-minded. Yeah, but there's this kind of tension where like, yes, on one hand, I really do believe everything that I was taught growing up in the church, all those sermons, all those Sunday school, all those Bible study sessions, that there's this God, that He loves me, that He cares for me, that He protects me. But on the other hand, I really couldn't see it. There's so much doubt. Yeah, and I held on to those that verse which says like, I believe, help my unbelief, which is saying essentially to Jesus like, yes, I believe that you exist, but if you're asking me, do I have enough of it to hold on to you? I really don't think I have enough of that. So would you please help me in that aspect? Yeah. So it was really, throughout all those years, there was a lot of sleepless nights. There was a lot of nights where I just cried myself to bed. I think one of the big turning points in my life came after the difficult part of the OCS journey. We could choose our specialization. One of the days, I think they started having chest tightness and difficulty breathing. Yeah, so my parents actually, they're very loving, they're very kind. They brought me to see all the, in some sense, top specialists, the cardiologist, the ENT doctor. They did, don't know what, they put in some like random wires to me, then I had to run on treadmills. Then they're like, oh, your son is perfectly fine, he's super healthy. Yeah, it was until one of the doctors, I think the gastroenterologist something is basically the doctor that can take care of your stomach. He was like, oh, maybe it's due linked to your, he asked me, do you ever have like difficulties in terms of your mental health. Yeah, then they faster refer me to the psychiatrist. They put me on some medication to help adjust the chemical imbalances in my head. I think especially after I started eating the medication, the side effects really hit. And there was a lot of days where I just couldn't even move. I was just staying stuck in the bed and like I just didn't want to eat. During those few months, it was definitely not easy. I was very privileged. I was given a lot of medical leave to be at home. Yeah, because I was really not well. I was really mentally not being able to, in some sense, grasp what is the meaning of life. And a lot of those thoughts of suicidal ideation constantly, I had to really like learn, I think as a psychologist, one of the psychologists taught me to really learn to be with them for maybe 10 minutes a day. But after that, learn to leave them aside and learn to focus on what is in front of me. Yeah, learn to focus on making more sense of my own life and of the world. Yeah. During those times was when I think I really wrote my journal here, where in some sense I read Christian books, I studied the Bible, I read the Bible, I prayed. And in some sense I journaled, I wrote what was on my mind, what are some questions that I have for God. And what are some things that, in some sense, God, I really need your help on me for me to really like make sense of this. I'm a bit nerdy. We are more the nerdy side of things. But I think that if you're watching this video, you probably like have access to all those. You have access to books. You have access to different worldviews. Yeah. For me, what I did was I went to really consider the worldview. At one point, I was reading different philosophers. One of them was called Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard. He was a Danish philosopher. He also grew up in the church. He was instructed in all the biblical teachings, in the story of God, of the world, of humanity. It was just that for him, there was this disconnect. Yeah, there was this disconnect like, oh, I still have so much doubts. I still have so much questions. And there's still gaps of reasoning that, you need to jump over. Yeah. And I think at the same time, there was this part of anxiety that was really chewing away at him, where he found that he used this analogy to really describe anxiety, which was that you are born and you find yourself in the driver's seat of a moving car. The car is just moving at this same gear. You can't change the gear, you can't go back also, there's no reverse. Neither is there a park. Yeah. Contrary to modern times more like today where we use car, you can't like open Google Maps or Wazi to like figure out, oh, this is a good place, this has good Google reviews, we should go here. Neither is there a GPS, no directory, no maps. And around you is just fogginess, and it's just misty, it's just dark. And at the same time, the car is moving. You have to make decisions, you have to drive. Yeah, and for him, the way that he got out of the anxiety was by doing what he described as a leap of faith. Yeah, where he considered that the Christian worldview is one that made the most sense. Yes, there's no ever worldview that answers all the questions perfectly. I think that's something that I would believe to be true. I don't know, maybe you can convince me otherwise. But yeah, I think there's no worldview that can adequately answer all the questions that we have. So even for Christianity, that's why they call it faith. That's why they call it a faith, because it requires an aspect of trusting in the unknown. There's an aspect where your sight is not able to see the full complete picture, but you choose to take a leap of faith to go to that destination that you believe makes the most sense out of it all. Yeah. And I think that was what really, I guess, changed my perspective on Christianity. I didn't have to know all the answers. I just have to know who I was as a person. What was it that I needed? Who is it that created this world? Who is this God? I think there were some special moments where, I don't know, I think that God just opened up my heart. He just spoke in such a clear manner, be it through people, be it through books like Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, to really say that, hey, God is really with you. It's not just some like pithy catchphrase to like okay, God is with you, like, yeah, no worries, you're good. But like, hey, He is really with you. It's not to dilute nor to decrease the amount of pain that you're going through, but it's to elevate the presence of God that is surrounding you at all times, even if you're not aware of it. But all I remember was that God was willing for me, His child, whom He dearly loves, and who I believe would hurt Him to see. I think for those who are a child or a parent, it would naturally hurt a parent to see their child go through pain and suffering. But in some sense, God was willing for me to go through all of that in order that I may come out of all those pain, maybe 5-6 years of depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, to come out through all of that with a stronger faith in Jesus Christ. Yeah, a stronger faith in that the gospel is real. So I was like in awe, like who in the right mind would be willing for someone that they love so dearly to go through that in order that, they can have a better relationship, they can live a more fulfilling life, they can live a life with such deep conviction that my life has a purpose and my purpose is found exactly in Jesus Christ. It's not for nothing. Yeah, even those years where I doubting like what's the point of all this, it is for something. Even right now, I will not be able to put such a good handle on it, but I can very confidently say that like it is not because that he was bad to me. It's not that he put those situations into my life, but he allowed me to enter into those situations in order that I may really know who I am, the sinner that I was, and yet such a merciful, gracious God that he was, in order that our relationship would really be something that in some sense is tested by fire, that is pruned by pain and suffering. Yeah, that kind of intimacy that you don't get with another person without going through the valley lows with them. He was willing to send his son to die on the cross for me. Yeah. So I guess when people ask me, what is your conversion story? Yeah, I won't say there wasn't much of a particular 180-degree change. But I would say it's a faithful, if I had to put it in a picture, it's like a shepherd with his sheep walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And this foolish sheep keep trying to run away, but the shepherd insisted, no, this sheep is mine and I'm going to care for him and love him all the days of his life until I get to see him face to face. And if you're watching this and doesn't matter so much whether you relate a lot to my story or like there are certain parts that you related to here, related to there, or even if you completely don't relate to a single part of the story, I guess I do have things that I want to say to you, and I guess it's my earnest plea that you would, if there's any part of the video, to sit up and to listen. This is it right now, because I think what I have to say is really important, and I guess even though I don't know how much you may feel of it, but from my end, I'm trying to express this in a manner that conveys as much love to you as possible, because those are genuinely what I feel towards you, even though I do not know you. Yeah. And I guess sometimes when I talk about this, people are like, oh, why is it so intense? Why did it suddenly get so intense when you talk about this? And I guess the answer that I give back to them is because the subject matter is so worthy of it. It's worthy of us to be intense, to be serious about it. Yeah. If you are going through periods of depression, anxiety, however you may call it, there may be days where you wake up and everything is just gloomy, moody outside. You may have suicidal ideation, you may have thoughts of self-harm, you may have feelings where like, whoa, I'll never ever be accepted. I'll always be lonely. No one will ever understand what I'm going through. No one will ever be able to relate to what I'm going through. And in some sense, there's just no hope. There's no light. That I'm in a tunnel, but it's just pitch black all the way. I want to tell you that to really consider the gospel of Jesus Christ. Yeah, you may ask me, what is the gospel of Jesus Christ? And a lot of times you may hear different Christians going around, oh, we are people that believe in the gospel. What does it even mean to be a Christian? I think the gospel at the root of it means good news. Yeah. And sometimes people ask me, what is good news? I tell them that good news actually exists. The reason why you need to hear this good news is because there is bad news. Yeah. For me, I believe that a creator God exists. That a creator God has created this. Yeah. And that is where the gospel, so we have talked about the bad news. That's where the gospel comes in, which is the good news, which is that God himself, he chose to take on flesh. So this is the creator God that we are talking about here. He chose to become part of creation, while still holding on to who he is in his character as God. And his name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. He lived a perfect life. He kept to all the commandments that God gave his people at that time, and he lived a perfect, sinless life. He obeyed all his parents. He did not tell a single lie. He did not hate on any single one. There was no thought of greediness within him, and he was just a pure, perfect human being. And yet, he chose willingly to lay down his life on the cross. He experienced the most excruciating pain in human history, not just physically, but emotionally. He was backstabbed, he was betrayed, he was forsaken, he felt alone, lonely, and everything that all of the judgment that was reserved, that we all deserve, that believers deserve, it was all laid upon Jesus Christ, and He took that sin. And in some sense, for those that believe, and the gospel is that for those that believe in Jesus, for those that trust in Jesus, for those that believe that Jesus is the rightful King, ruler, the Christ, Jesus Christ. Christ means the chosen one, the anointed one, the one that is chosen by God to come and bear the sins of all humanity. If you believe that Jesus is the Christ, He takes away all your sin. He takes upon all your sin. And not only that, the way that God looks at you is as if you live the life of Jesus Christ. So it doesn't matter whether you are a Christian, a non-Christian, you call yourself a believer, unbeliever. I don't know what you feel out when people ask you what's your religion. I implore you really to consider the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Bible says that the gospel is the power of God unto salvation for everyone who believes in Jesus. So if there's anything that I can tell you, is to really consider the gospel. If you don't know what is the gospel, you can go search on this thing called twowaystoLive.com. You can go to any of your Christian friends, go and ask them. And in fact, you can even get yourself a Bible, start reading from Matthew, start talking to Jesus, this God, because He hears you, He is there for you, and He wants you to turn to Him. Because this God has such good plans for those who come to believe in Him.